Hey, let's do this, shall we? Welcome to the Friday edition of the Nooner with Dave LaMont. I am, the guy whose name is right above there. Down there, Twitter account, Instagram, YouTube, all available for absolutely no charge whatsoever. I've got two unbelievably special guests waiting in the other room, so they'll get their chance here in just a couple of minutes. But just a few psychobabble thoughts before I bring in Ray Bentley and Mark Neely. I got to Game 2 of the World Series the other day about 25 minutes late, and I noticed a pitching change in the third inning for the Dodgers, and I realized they did that silliness where they start a reliever and then bring in a reliever and then bring in a reliever, and we just go on and on forever with that instead of the more traditional way. It didn't work. Did it not work because the relievers pitched lousy? Well, yeah, that's part of it. But I don't know. Am I getting elderly? Well, yes, but can you just throw a guy out there for 5 or 6 innings and do it the way baseball was intended to be played? And oddly enough, the team that invented this oddball strategy, Tampa Bay, benefited by it and ends up tying the series. Again, I'm not swearing up and down that this is why the Dodgers lost Game 2. I'm just saying, as a fan of the game since childhood, the optics of this are all screwed up to me. I don't understand the strategy behind it. I may have never even tried to understand the strategy behind it. I kind of like it, and we've been reminded of this with the recent death of Tom Seaver and the Bob Gibson. Good God, could you imagine telling Gibson, don't worry about Game 2, buddy. We're going to send out a bunch of relief pitchers. We'll be fine. He would knock the manager unconscious, and should. So let's see what they do with Game 3 tonight. And hopefully we get, a guy go out there and just do what you can for how many ever innings you're good enough, and then we'll let the bullpens decide where they may. I have enjoyed the series. I know, like everything else in sports, the television ratings are down. We discussed that already ad nauseum. The biggest story in South Florida is still the Tua Tagovailoa announcement, but it was botched. What we didn't know until the next day is that it was supposed to have been announced by the head coach, Brian Flores, to everybody on the team. And from what we can tell from Flores, he seems to be a guy who wants to and does try to do anyway the right things, or at least what we agree to be the right things. And that would have been the way to handle it. First, you tell the guys personally, and then you go ahead. Well, it looks like somebody leaked to Adam Schefter, who was the first one, I believe, to break the story. And then you have this painful Ryan Fitzpatrick interview the next day where he talks about how his heart was broken and he's going to try to mentor. And he felt like, I've been fired and I've been asked to help the guy who's replacing me. Football is kind of weird that way. And other sports too, where sometimes you do mentor the guy who's going to take your job. There is a history of that in the sport, and particularly at the quarterback position, but it's still weird. When I got fired from WIOD in the morning show with 12 years ago now, I didn't get to come in Monday morning and coach the person who replaced me. In fact, they didn't have a replacement for a few weeks. That's what's so bizarre about all of this, is that, he has to now, and he has been working with Tua already, but he now has to stand there and root for the guy because it's in his best interest, as well as the team's, obviously, if this guy ends up being able to play at the NFL level, which the Dolphins are clearly confident at because his first game is the Rams. And Aaron Donald just has worn out offenses in the NFL for the last several years. So it's not an easy assignment for Tua. That the bye week will benefit that. But I thought Fitzpatrick, to his credit, was brutally honest. Now, you can parse what he says if you'd like, but he was nothing but truthful that, it stinks. I've been benched. And the funny thing is he was playing halfway decently. Really, I can only think of opening day was his one mediocre or bad game against New England. And ever since then, he's played very well. But now he's going to have to sit and watch. I still think at some point this year he'll be back on the field because of the way quarterbacks get popped these days, and the injury rates are still somewhat high. And if Tua flunks out, then this whole gamble, at least for this year, is a disaster. So, but we're way too ahead of ourselves in that. Quickly, before I bring the guys in, and we're going to talk a lot of college football and probably some pros as well. I had the funniest conversation with a Florida alum last night trying to get through their schedule. And it ended up, and I thought I knew it from the top of my head, and I had to spend 3 or 4 minutes on my phone going over their schedule to understand it. And he follows the team, trust me. But we got into this. Okay, well, they're playing this. No, they're not playing this week. They didn't play. No, they didn't play last week. That game's moved to December 12th. Okay, yeah, that's LSU, right? So they're playing Missouri this week. No, they're not. Missouri's playing, but they're playing Kentucky. Well, what happened to the Missouri game? Well, that's going to be Halloween now. Oh, and this went around in a circle for, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes before we finally left it that Florida is off again this week. They will end up having a 3-week bye by the time they hit the field against Missouri, assuming nothing else goes goofy up there, and I don't think it will. I'm hearing everything is getting back to normal. And then the LSU game is December 12th. So are we all caught up on that? You've got the Hurricanes with another one of those games that they used to lose in the past, hosting Virginia, who just seems to have disappeared off the radar. And you wonder about Bronco Mendenhall's interest in that job anymore. And Florida State has a chance to get to 500 in Louisville today or Saturday. And if they can get to that, considering how poorly they started and how awful they looked against Miami, that would be a major achievement in Mike Norvell's first year to get to 500. And again, the way we judge Florida State now is so strange from what we used to judge. And happy to hear that Bobby Bowden in his 90s was able to defeat COVID and is out of a hospital. All right, college football is what our friends here know better than anybody. And I can't tell you the affection I have for these two. A man in the middle, of course, that I've called probably more college football games with than anyone else, Ray Bentley. And on the far right, Mark Neely. This is actually probably with Ray, Mark, you and I have had more luck than anybody else drawing this guy as a partner.
Well, I can repeat what you just said. I think I've called more games with Ray than any other analyst as well. So you and I have that in common for sure.
The two luckiest announcers I know.
I think we actually feel that same way. All right, so the Big Ten's back.
Start making phone calls.
And here they go with the sprint. Hey, Jake, how you doing, buddy? Is that Jake I hear in the background?
Yeah, he's got big renegade business. He's president of a little league football operation, and it's getting to be playoff time, so it's serious.
Oh, I know. I'm sure there's going to be film study as soon as we finish the show. All right, so let's talk about the return of the Big Ten and where this fits, because we've had the ACC go off, not hitchless, the SEC and Big 12. The Big Ten belong in this playoff race?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, for sure, for Ohio State. But I'm with you. What you were just describing, Dave, about Florida's schedule. What happens with the Big Ten schedule? If it's only supposed to play 6 games. If they don't play, no contest. So how are we going to judge a lot of the Big Ten teams? But I think Ohio State's definitely a team that's probably going to be there in the end. No question about it. They're getting the tune up at Nebraska. Then the game against Penn State coming up should be a big one right away. But I'm with you. It's hard to keep track of who's playing when, where, and how, and all the logistics to it. So I'm glad the Big Ten's in it, no question about it. And I think Ohio State's far and away the class of the conference.
Ray, it's going to be awkward because the first time the committee sends out a ranking, the Big Ten, if everything goes perfectly, will only have played 5 games. Is it fair to judge them a contender that quickly?
I don't think anything's fair this year. I think you have to take this one and just see what happens, because things are changing moment by moment. So, I mean, yeah, we can all speculate. And I think, people who know football can recognize the top football teams. I think they've done a fairly decent job of that. And, even though we won't have maybe the results to compare that we had in the past, we still got the eyeball test. And we kind of been around this for a while. We know what teams are a little bit. But I'm anxious to see it. I'm looking forward to it. I couldn't tell you how happy I am that Maction is coming back next month, because that's really what college football is all about to me.
In a lot of ways it is. We've had the privilege, all of us, of going to those towns and being in those stadiums and seeing the guys who are playing the football. Many of them do not have pro aspirations, but they're still playing. Now, Ray, for those who don't know, did play in the Mid-American Conference at Central Michigan and did play in the NFL, so he got out. But you're right. That level of football, to me, is just as much fun and in some ways more enjoyable, because you don't run into the attitudes that you might run into at the power schools.
Agreed. There's not a lot of that feeling like somebody owes you something. These guys are there to work hard, and they understand that it's not necessarily given to them. It hasn't been, so they got to work for it, and that's kind of, to me, creates value. And so I love the underdog and the I don't know, group of five, you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think they play great football. They get after it. I saw an unbelievable game last week between Louisiana and Coastal Carolina, who you and I had a chance to do a game there, and we're very impressed with the way they're doing things. So I love a good turnaround story like that, and that's kind of where you see them more often.
Mark, you said something really interesting. A tune-up against Nebraska. Did you think in your lifetime, whether as an announcer or as a fan, you'd ever use that sentence in your life?
In the last few years, yes, but prior to that, no. Where I'm based out of the Kansas City area, Lincoln, Nebraska is probably about a 2.5, 3-hour ride. So there's a number of Nebraska fans in the Kansas City area, not as many Kansas and Sioux fans, but enough of them. And you see them around town, and they've just been despondent for so many years. And I think, are we getting to the point where Nebraska, which was arguably one of the blue bloods, especially for us, guys our age growing up, Nebraska, that's about as good as it got. And it hasn't been that way for a really, really long time. And is it ever even going to get close to that again? And I don't have any ties to Nebraska, but to the Nebraska fans, I say I would be extremely surprised if Nebraska ever gets back to that level.
Really?
I would.
No belief in the Frost man. I think he's going to turn that around.
I hope that's the case, because Nebraska belongs in the upper echelon of college football, but it's just been so long, and it's almost like Kirk Herbstreit with Texas, and Texas is back or whatever, but when you think they are, no, they're not. So
right.
I'll believe it when I see it, but I would love to see it, because I would love to see Nebraska back where they belong, and maybe someday, if Nebraska and Oklahoma ever got a chance to play again, that'd be one of them.
When it went south is when they let Frank Solich go for winning 10, 11 games every year.
And you were just talking about the back, and all three of us have been to Athens, Ohio numerous times and seen Frank. And, when you go back and you look at it, that's it. Frank Solich got punished for winning only 10 or 11 games.
Yeah, poor guy.
Just like that ever since. And he's a Nebraska guy. Keep him there.
Totally. Played there, and Bo Pelini, too, if you think about it, he was winning 8-9 games a year, and it wasn't enough. And, yeah, I know there were issues with his behavior, but still, I don't remember them having any academic issues. I don't remember them having any off-field stuff. It was just it wasn't enough for that crowd. And now they've got to be sitting around scratching their heads going, where did we go wrong? I mean, Mike Riley clearly didn't work out. They bring the golden child in from UCF, where he had done an unbelievable turnaround, maybe the best in the last 10, 15 years in the sport. And it's not there. I just wonder if a generation has gone by where Nebraska wasn't big time. Other schools have stepped into that void, and for a kid, it may not be the dream it used to be.
I think that's
exactly my point. Yeah, and Ray could probably echo the same thing. Once you skip a generation, that's ancient history for these kids that they're recruiting now. Now, who knows? Ohio State hasn't played a game. They have Justin Fields and a great team, but they got to go to Lincoln. If somehow Nebraska was able to pull that off, then maybe that's the start of something in what's been a weird season.
The same thing's happening here with the University of Miami. Same thing's happening at USC. You mentioned Texas, these schools that we used to count on every year. Florida State is down. I remember when they played Notre Dame and didn't get beat by 40, everybody called that progress. It's odd that some of these schools have taken these tumbles, and all self-inflicted, I think, in these cases. Either Jimbo Fisher ran out of steam. Maybe they didn't give Taggart enough time. Miami has gone through a succession of coaches, I think, too quickly. It's going back to Randy Shannon, who was probably let go too soon. It's the fan bases are living in that past, and I know that for a fact. I'm a UM alum, Miami Hurricanes alum. Michigan, although they're winning 8, 9, 10, 9 games, they haven't really been relevant. Ray, you're a Michigan State fan at heart. They're trying to elbow their way back into where they used to be. It's interesting that the changes. Now you're not buying into that?
I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. The Spartans have greatly disappointed me. In fact, Michigan State, the things that have gone on there in the last couple of years are hugely disappointing. So I hope they get it back together. And the Wolverines, Harbaugh is good for 8-9 a year now. I mean, that's not what they want, but that's what Jim is able to give them. So I wonder how long they'll put up with that. I'm surprised they've gone this long.
Can Minnesota roll the boat this weekend and knock off Michigan? I think they can.
I think they are. I think they will.
You know, as oddball, and we've dealt with PJ Fleck before. Say what you will, and Ray, I know that you don't have a PJ Fleck tat on your back, but the guy wins.
A little lower than that, I'd put one.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second. But say what you will, he's winning.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, we've done several games with PJ Fleck as the head coach, even back when he was at Western Michigan, and some Minnesota games. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it where he has I almost want to call it brainwashing. He mesmerizes those kids. It's amazing. He brought out a fake diamond, and he was giving this cold a diamond speech. And he pulls out, and it was a trinket. It was a big glass diamond that was obviously worthless, but he pulls it out, and the whole room goes, ooh. We looked at each other and started laughing. It's like, what is he? He's got a way to bring them together, and it blows my mind because when I see him, I want to go the opposite direction. But he must have some Jedi mind trick or a hypnotist, whatever it is, but he gets a collective group coming together and they get after it. And it's hard to be critical of that because he's getting it done.
I mean, you think about what he accomplished at Western, and we all know that area pretty well. He had game day there, for heaven's sakes. Mm-hmm. The year they went to the Cotton Bowl. And the diamond thing, just to add on to that story, because we did that game, that diamond looked like something, if you go to the arcade and you play that claw game where you reach down and you try to pick up a PS4 game, but you end up picking up like a rubber ball, that's where it looked like it came from.
Yeah,
one of those ball machines. You know? But yeah,
those kids were shocked and awed by the whole deal.
Yeah. And the other thing, Mark, and you've probably dealt with this, and my son went to Western Michigan, my oldest, so he was there during the Fleck period, and he would tell me that every time, if he happened to go by a football player, hey, man, how's it going? I'm elite. I mean, that was the immediate answer every time. How are you feeling today? I'm elite. And he sets himself up to be the brunt of jokes, but here he is at a Big Ten school and talking about them beating Michigan.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Hey, guys, my apology. I've lost hearing here, and I'm trying to get this back. So you can probably hear me, but I'm working on that right now.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I think and it's a shame he's missing a hell of a show.
Yes.
What about the Pac-12, Ray? They're going to be the latest of everybody jumping back in. If somebody takes off there, do you still put the same standard you put with the Big Ten for the Pac-12 as having a seat at the table for the playoff?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's much different other than the fact that the Pac-12 has been down. Mm-hmm. They've couple times they've had teams in the playoffs, and they just they feel like, and we know this from being on the inside, they feel like they're being scorned by the TV networks, that they aren't getting the high profile time slots and things of that nature, and so they put a lot of pressure on the networks to try to get them more exposure, but you got to do it on the field, and that's where they haven't done it. And it's a head scratcher, honestly, to me, because I know there's a lot of good football players west of the Mississippi, and I almost look at it almost as a coaching issue, to be honest with you. Name me a big name coach out west now. They've been very guys, and can you name one?
The biggest name is Chip Kelly, but he hasn't succeeded. I mean, I guess I don't even know if Mario Cristobal at Oregon is considered a name. And there were all the rumors about Urban Meyer, leaving the Fox lot and heading over to USC, which didn't work out. And Todd Helton, again, maybe not a name, but I think Todd Helton could go a lot of places, even in LA. and not be recognized. And you're right.
Mm-hmm.
The days of the celebrity coach, other than Chip Kelly, well, Herm Edwards is a celebrity coach, but he's not winning big.
No, not yet, but I think Herm has a chance. I like the way he's doing things at Arizona State, but it's been a kind of a steady decline for that left coast and the football they play out there, and it's a bit of a head scratcher, to be honest, because I know there's talent out there.
Yeah, no question about it. I'll jump back in on that, Ray. And having lived on the West Coast for a while, and I don't mean to throw a blanket statement out there, but being in the upper Midwest in the Big Ten and in the South with the SEC, from a fan base mentality, the West Coast fans are much easier to check out on a program than, this is in my opinion, on fans in the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12. Maybe that's because the weather's beautiful in a lot of those areas and they got a lot of other things to do. But there's no question in my mind that the passion level on the West Coast doesn't match. Not that they don't have great fans in some areas, but it doesn't match other areas of the country. But they've got talent, man. You live in the LA area, or where? I mean, there's kids there that are off the charts recruiting wise.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and everybody goes, and plus they used to have, and maybe they're not getting the kids out of Texas like they used to. I think that's another thing. Texas has become so good, and everybody's going in there, including schools like Boise State, which has become a powerhouse in a so-called non-power conference. Actually, a pretty good conference in the Mountain West. And Oregon is moving around in there. I think there's just been a shift, like there's been a shift in the ACC, like there's no shift in the SEC. That thing is stuck in neutral at the moment, it looks like. And so is the ACC now with Clemson, because there's no challenger to Clemson, is there, guys? I mean, that was a bad loss for North Carolina. And I can tell you, living here, that I fully expected Miami to get throttled, and they didn't disappoint me when they played Clemson.
Yeah, you got Notre Dame in there this year, which the fact that they're number 3 in the country tells you that this is not a normal year, because I do not see that when I watch the Fighting Irish play. That's a number 3 team. Okay,
right. Which is worse?
Cincinnati 9 then.
Which is more egregious? Notre Dame at 3 or Oklahoma State at 6? Because I look at Oklahoma State's schedule, and I think they could lose every game the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And I know this is just a byproduct of what's a weird season, but Oklahoma State number 6, really. But I get what you're saying with Notre Dame at 3.
You know what? To me, we'll find out, because they get to play Clemson here coming up pretty soon.
Right.
But it's a really weird year, man. Because how do you rank a team that hasn't played yet? So I get that whole part of it. But right now, these rankings are as skewed as you'll ever see. And it looks to me like, having not seen Pac-12 or Big Ten go at it yet, it's Alabama and Clemson. There's no one else even in that sphere right now. That's what it is. And that's what I believe we'll see at the end of this thing.
Well, I got to admit, I drank the Kool-Aid last week on Georgia. Everybody had been telling me how bad the Alabama defense was, and I should have known better than that. And the fact that Georgia has quarterbacks that go there, don't play, and transfer and go to other schools, and still are first-round draft picks, but they didn't get the play they needed from Stetson in that game the other day.
No, and the funny thing, I believe there was a graphic that pointed out the second halves over the years in Georgia-Alabama games and how much more dominant Alabama has been. That Georgia, the old you can run but you can't hide, and they get found out in the second half of those games every time. And I'm sure coaching plays into that, but ultimately so does talent and so does depth.
Depth, I think, is the number one thing in that regard. And honestly, I think that when you play a big dog, you get yourself pumped up usually, and you got a lot of extra adrenaline and emotion early on, and you go toe to toe. But when that stuff goes out the window come third, fourth quarter, and now it's just mano-a-mano, we find out.
Hey, call me crazy, but not this Saturday, but next Saturday when Georgia has to go to Kentucky. Kentucky's been better. Most people don't realize how good Kentucky's been the last couple of years. They've gotten a lot better. Georgia can lose in Lexington, Kentucky next week. That's just my thought.
And then they have
done a great job there.
Yeah, and they have Florida after that in a game that's going to be gigantic for Florida if they're going to win that East Division like they all think they're going to. I looked at Oklahoma State's schedule here, Mark, just to play it safe. So they have Iowa State this week, then Texas. And we know how goofy Texas is. Right when you think they have nothing left and they're going to blow the whole season, they win a game that you don't think they're going to win. Then Kansas State, big surprise this year. I think we would agree. Oklahoma, a big surprise in the wrong direction. Then Texas Tech, who can't stop anybody, and then they finish the year December 5th in Fort Worth. And Gary Patterson, another guy who always seems to win a game every year that nobody sees coming.
Yeah, I could see him going 1-4 there, or
4-1. I think Texas Tech's obviously the one game they'd be a favorite in, but the other ones they're a toss-up for me, really, for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, exactly. Let me shift to the NFL, and Mark, I'll start with you since you're in the KC area. How many times have you seen Pat Mahomes walking on water lately?
Everybody asks. This is a Pat Mahomes town, and I don't mean to sound crude here, but Patrick Mahomes could go relieve himself on somebody's grandparents' graves, and those people would be like, "Our grandparents' graves have Pat Mahomes on them." That he can do no wrong in this town. And I'll give him this: he seems to have. He gets it. He does it right. He's a leader. He says the right things. He's obviously won a Super Bowl. He's the guy. But if you had to ask me who's playing the best right now in the NFL at quarterback, for me it wouldn't be Patrick Mahomes. And I don't mean to denigrate Patrick Mahomes. We're just taking the sample size of this year. But for me, Russell Wilson's been the best quarterback in the NFL this year.
I'm 100% with you on that.
Come on. Stafford with the Lions, turn it up.
Yeah, I was going to gradually work my way into Ray's fandom because Ray not only played for a tortured fan base, since he was literally born, he has rooted for one of the most tortured fan bases in the entire world of sports. I'm talking about European soccer fans. I'm talking about fans of Japanese baseball teams. I'm talking about whatever. That is, of course, the Detroit Lions, Ray being a Michigan native.
Well, I'm sure you, Dave, like me, have seen the 0-16 Lions commemorative shirt that he would wear to
our season, baby.
Our meetings. And if the Jets somehow were to go 0-16 this year, Ray would be upset at that.
I would.
Because he wants the Lions to keep that.
Yeah, they need that. They need some sort of distinction other than no playoff games no playoff wins since 1957. And only one playoff appearance in that 50-plus odd year.
It's the
Bobby
curse.
Lane curse.
The Bobby Lane
cursed him, and he had every right to.
Yep, that's going back a long ways. Look it up, folks.
I've been cursing him ever since.
I know that, but I've actually seen photographs of you as a child in Lions gear. Those old. By the way, why did they stop making those 3/4 sleeve shirts for football teams for fans? I'll never know. But those were the absolute greatest to have because I still have. This is no lie. I still have my Sonny Jurgensen Washington Football Club that I can't fit into anymore, but I cannot bring it to myself.
No, got to keep it.
That is going to go with me no matter where I live for the rest of my life. That shirt stays with me.
I wore those type of shirts all through grade school and middle school. And I would like to say the ladies loved it, but I don't really have positive proof of that. But I continue to wear those type of shirts. Those were classics.
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard some of your stories. There's positive proof, believe me.
Ray, let's talk about your other squad, the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
Got off to a fabulous start, and they've run into some scheduling issues, including Kansas City. What are their chances now with New England slipping on the ice that they can win that division?
I think they're going to win that division, and I don't think it's going to be that close. They got the Jets coming up and then New England after that, and that'll tell a lot of the story. But this is I think, one of the top offenses in the NFL, especially when they got it clicking. And Josh Allen is in his third year, and this guy, I think, is going to end up being a Hall of Famer. He's going to win championships. I have a great belief in him. And everything I've heard and the way he goes about his business and the gradual improvement that he's made and just the dude is so talented. He can throw it anywhere he wants. He can run people over. He can run around them. And he's adapting and learning. You can see the growth and the maturation. And they got some guys around him. The Singletary kid is an outstanding running back. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to be great. And then they got Diggs now, and they got weapons all over the place. And they play good defense up in Buffalo. and wait till the weather turns and they start, playing the old blizzard ball. I think they're going to be a team that will have to dealt with way down the road, a playoff team that will go a ways in the playoffs.
Well, people here in Kansas City are still talking about the Bills game and the fact that how much Andy Reid went away from the stereotype of Pat Mahomes slinging the ball over the field and using the running game to beat the Bills, which really I think the Bills weren't expecting. Chiefs fans here weren't expecting that type of game from the Chiefs. And when they add Le'Veon Bell, not to get off the subject of the Bills, but what do the Chiefs do then when you got Le'Veon Bell and Edwards-Helaire running so well?
Well, you got the right guy to figure it out. I think people finally have gotten off Andy Reid's case with that Super Bowl victory, and you don't hear any negative talk about him anymore. Not that there should have been a lot of it, but we all understand the storyline there, and I think he's shut that one down, thankfully.
But go ahead, Bray.
I was going to say, didn't Andy Reid do a 6 cheeseburger sprint after the Super Bowl?
During. He can't do it now because he's wearing that mask and the ketchup to get all over it. He couldn't see.
You got to shove it up under there.
Well, my thought about the Bills, and I'm going to tie this all the way back to Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick, because it obviously this looks to be a year where the Patriots aren't the dominant team like they have been seemingly forever. And I'll ask you, Dave, since you're there in the market, what record for Ryan Fitzpatrick would have been the point of, we really can't move to Tua right now? Because to me, it almost looks like they said, hey, if we're 500 or below or what, there's that off week and we got the Rams, that'd be the time to throw Tua in there. I mean, the guy's thrown 2 passes.
There was a lot of surprise when that happened. And there were people, it was funny, I did a commentary about 2 weeks ago that it started when Justin Herbert got hot early. That people were starting to say that Tua was a bust. I'm like, well, wait. Don't you have to go out and screw up to be a bust? He hadn't done anything. And this was among the many players who were hurt by not having a training camp. I would have put him almost at the top of the list because we would have seen him in action in preseason games. I think all of that hurt him. To me, Fitzpatrick was playing pretty damn well. Again, the New England game, he didn't play well. And he had, I think, the Seattle game, he could have played better. In all, played rather well. I think that's why he was surprised. There's an attitude here that this is the right move, but it was handled poorly, which I talked about at the top of the show. It was handled poorly because somebody leaked the information. I don't think I can blame Brian Flores for that. He's a Belichick guy. He's not leaking anything. Mm-hmm. So the problem is, damn, you're playing the Rams. I mean, Aaron Donald lives in people's backfield.
That's the first thing I thought of.
Man,
here's a guy who had this bad hip injury, and not that any NFL team can't bring a great rushing defense, but Aaron Donald, I mean, the guy who is the beast, arguably one of the best football players we've seen.
I hate it when your performance becomes irrelevant as to your playing time. And that's professional football. They paid the youngster a lot of money. People want to see what he can do. Yeah, well, your guys got you at 4-2 and you're playing good ball. Why would you upset that apple cart? I think it's one of the dumbest damn moves I've seen in a while. I'll be honest with you. And, maybe Tua will go out and light it up and I'm an idiot. But I got to tell you, I would never do that to my football team. And I hate more than anything the way that they will. It's not a meritocracy. It's not. And if it's not, then I don't want a part of it. Because if you're not valued for your merit and evaluated on your merit, then what in the hell are we doing?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not like the Patriots are 6-0 and Miami's 2-4, and it's like, hey Ryan, you played well. I grew up in St. Louis, so I remember Ryan when he got drafted by the St. Louis Rams and the career that he's had. I think he's had he's kind of a punching bag, like Tyrod Taylor losing his job again to Herbert in this instance. I mean, the guy's 37 years old. He's been in the league a long time. He's got over 34,000 passing yards. The guy's had arguably a good career. He's not a Hall of Famer. Yeah, I know that.
No.
But the guy's been in the league a long time. And I'm with you guys. I mean, I was shocked by it, and I feel bad for the guy because I think he looks at it like I'm 37 years old. I had a chance to lead a team to the playoffs this year, and he may still, like you mentioned at the top of the show, Dave, It doesn't mean that Tua is in there for the rest of the year. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and the other thing about Fitzpatrick is he's a good locker room guy. I have not yet encountered any stories or anybody saying this guy is a jerk or he divides locker rooms or he's a diva or any of that other stuff. You never hear any of that stuff. Chad Pennington was here for a year, actually the only really good year they had under Tony Sperano, and he was thought of the same way. Yeah. Like people are going, why did the Jets give up on this guy? He's just a solid guy and he played well. And then, unfortunately, he had too many injuries to make his career last. But the same things are being said about Fitzpatrick that have been said about Chad Pennington.
Well, you just said 4 words that people in Manhattan say all the time that starts with, why did the Jets? And then just add, and then just go from there, add the end of the sentence.
Well, people here are getting a special thrill out of the failure of the Jets because of the whole Miami-New York rivalry and the large New York population we have down here, and the fact that Adam Gase is failing miserably in New York. But have we reached a point now where making a coaching change would be a bad thing? You might as well go after that T-shirt of Rays and go 0-16 and grab yourself a piece of Trevor Lawrence?
They have so many issues. I wouldn't know where to start with the Jets.
No, you're right.
With you, tear them down. It's really a sad situation, and I couldn't be happier. I'm not a Jets fan either, so let them rot.
But they were pretty good when you played them, right? Or were they bad then too?
A couple of years that they were up and down through that time. I do remember in 1988 we played them at home and clinched our first East Division champion in like 722 years. It had been a while, and Fred Smerlas blocked a overtime field goal attempt by the Jets, and we won it. And I'll never forget that day. So I do like the Jets for that anyway. They're a perfect foil.
There are decisions that people make in these ownership and management positions that I'll never understand. And Adam Gase was right there at the top. It wasn't as if he came down here and took the Dolphins to 3 straight Super Bowls. It's been, and Don Shula did that, but Adam Gase did not. And he gets a job in an even bigger market with even more eyeballs on him. And that right away told me that there's something wrong with the decision-making level at that organization.
Yeah. He'll be in Detroit next year.
Oh. Hey, they were doing okay with Jim Caldwell. This could be the Frank Solich effect. They at least were decent with Jim Caldwell.
Yeah, it's amazing to me to watch them week in and week out because they you know what, they got some talent, but they find ways to lose like nobody I've seen, and this is a lifetime of watching this, and it's kind of gotten humorous, and maybe that's my way of not crying. Mm-hmm. Is I laugh because they do some of the stupidest things. It took Matt Patricia. He played more man-to-man than anybody over the last 3.5 years. And guess what? They got the worst friggin' corners going. But that's what we do in New England. We're going to do it the New England way. Well, dumbass finally decided to play some zone against Arizona, and they won. And then he scrapped that, and he went back to the man the previous week or the next week, and they lost. And guess what? They played more zone than anybody else this past weekend, and they get a W over Jacksonville. So it took Matt Patricia 3.5 years to figure that out. Now, come on, get a pencil behind your ear, buddy, and tell me how it works.
So it was only Jacksonville, but do you buy the talk going into that game that he had to win or he was out?
Yeah, if they'd have lost to Jacksonville, I think he might have got Hamp-stamped. Sheila Ford Hamp is now calling the shots, and all I've seen from her is the William Clay Ford playbook. I hope she tries to do something a little different, but I am not optimistic whatsoever because she still got that big F in her name.
Hey, Ray, you mentioned something with your son Jake, and I did want to touch on this with you because you're coaching youth football where you live, and your son Jake and you have been doing this for a couple of years. Is this whole situation we're living in the pandemic affected your youth football league very much?
Yeah, we have to follow the the COVID protocol. This COVID's pretty smart. They make us wear masks on the sideline, but when you go out and actually play and you're in someone else's face from the other team, see, COVID don't go on the field. It only stays on the sideline. And we figured that out. So we are able to handle that. And so far we haven't had any issues. They got a lot of other little things that they like us to do. And we're following it. And I'll tell you why. Not because I believe in it, but it's the only way that these kids will be able to play. And so we're pretty strict about it because we understand people are watching. There are people out there that can't wait to shut us down. And God knows why. I haven't figured that out yet. And if somebody does, please call me. But the way we've been able to do it is following the rules. And it hasn't affected any shutdowns or anything. We've been very fortunate in that regard, and we've been able to play everything up to this point. So been fortunate in that regard. So we're getting after it. We're still playing ball. I coach it's called a 3rd and 4th grade team, but I have 2 4th graders and the rest of them are 2nd and 3rd graders. So we're playing up a level because we play double-digit 4th graders every week. And my little they're kind of a cross between the Little Giants and the Bad News Bears. And I'm going to write a book about this season because it's been some of the craziest, most outlandish stuff. And we got beat 36-0, 50-0, and 56-6 so far. But we got a chance this week because we're playing the other crappy team.
You're playing the Jets. Apparently,
well, we might be the damn Jets. I don't know.
Mark,
we're having a great time.
What about the high schools in your area? What's that situation like?
Yeah, they're some are playing, some are not. They're in the Kansas City area. Some of the Olathe schools, which is a suburb in the south, have had to miss some games. But it's kind of like what college football has been, where teams just kind of have to make it up on the fly, where they would change opponents within a few days. Hey, are you guys? Do you have enough guys to play? It's been pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
So
same here.
Same here. The public, it's interesting. I'm still affiliated with a private school a mile from here, and they cobbled together a schedule, but there's only 2 teams from this area that they're actually playing. They've had to go to Tampa, to Jacksonville. They had a team from Jacksonville come here. I had been doing a little bit of PA work for the girls volleyball team, and they got in the district finals and lost, but it's okay because there were only 2 teams in the district. So they went to the regional tournament, even though they lost. And they're trying just the volleyball. And I didn't go to the football game Friday because it was just pouring here and I didn't want to bother with it. But the volleyballs, every 5 points, they would sub a new volleyball in, and they would take the old ball and throw it back to the back, and somebody would wipe it down and clean it, and they'd have a couple of clean volleyballs ready, and every 5 points, like just clockwork, new ball, new ball, new ball, new ball. So, and the other thing that I don't know if you guys read this article, but Ray mentioned the COVID not following on the field. There almost may be something to that because the article suggested it's not necessarily the football, it's the stuff you're doing off the field that could be worse. The team meals, the travel together, the training together could be worse than what we all thought might have been a problem, which is the actual contact.
You bring up what really, for me, is the bigger picture issue, and I feel really badly. My son was a high school senior last year, and the kids who are senior now, the juniors, this has really affected recruiting. It's completely going to change all the sports, just because of certain kids are always, you can identify, hey, this kid's marquee, he's going to get a shot, he's a top recruit. But it's all those kids who have a chance to play where you see them their senior year, and those kids may not get a chance to play now. It's going to affect college sports for at least, 3-4 years, just because of kids that didn't get a chance to get recruited, or they didn't get enough opportunities to really show it. I don't know how you recruit well these days.
No, that's a good point. And Ray, we go back to when you mentioned the MAC. A lot of these kids that are a little bit under the radar, that's the kind of conference where they wind up going, and getting a chance to play at Miami or Ohio or Central, Eastern, and so forth and so on. And you wonder how those schools are going to do, looking for those gems that are sometimes hard to find.
Yeah, it's going to put a new twist to the whole thing, but they still have to fill those scholarship spots. So somebody's going. Yeah. And it might actually give some teams an advantage. Those who have a good feel for the kind of person that they want, not necessarily the kind of athlete, but the person. And then you get enough of the right people together, and they're obviously athletes, or they wouldn't be even in consideration for recruiting. So I think the emphasis might have to switch to that, and I think that's where it should be in the first place.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, I know in basketball it's completely skewered. And you know what, Mark, it may go back now. High school basketball may start taking up more importance again because AAU had to step aside for the most part. And, you know, now what you do in high school, like it does in football, because you don't have AAU football, maybe that'll start mattering again.
Well, I don't want to pick on AAU, but the less AAU has to do with high school basketball and into college basketball, the better, because that's been an absolute
Agreed.
mess.
You know,
Absolute mess.
We had a lot of experience with it, so I see the good and the bad. So it worked out for my boys, but it doesn't work for everybody, and you're right.
It depends on who you get associated with, the individual especially. And unfortunately, I'm not going to label them all bad, but there's certainly – AAU has its share of guys that you would say are a little sketchy.
No doubt. No, sometimes the kids are sketchy too. I've literally seen kids play one team in the morning and play, walk across the court and join another team in the afternoon. I mean, that has happened. So
with a brand new birth certificate, no less.
Well, and not even that. It's just it's. We didn't run into any of that with the people we were with, and Mark's right. It is the crowd you hang out with that sometimes helps define your experience. Not sometimes, a lot of times helps define your experience. So, and that's how I feel about you guys. The crowd I hang out with when it comes to you two makes me look way better than I really am. I want to thank you both. I love you guys very much, and I appreciate you taking a few minutes to spend with me, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Anytime, bro.
Anytime, brother.
All right, boy. That's all for this nooner on a Friday with Mark Neely and Ray Bentley. I'm Dave LaMont. This will be on YouTube whenever I have the energy to download it, and we'll see everybody later. Take care.